Are you serious? Are you serious, folks? You came to the right broadcast today. It's about time that we really seriously address this potential EMP threat. Certainly an EMP attack could happen, and we've heard a lot about the fact that our power grids are not really protected, which means if our power grids are not protected, you're not protected, I'm not protected, and the whole country is probably susceptible. Now, who has this potential to affect the United States like that? Who has this capability, this technology? Well, we're going to go find out from the expert, who really is truly an expert. You may have seen him many times on the Hagman Report and other shows across the internet and on television. It's Stan Deyo is joining us today. Stan, great to have you on the broadcast.
Thank you. Good to be here. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it, Paul?
It really has. I've been watching you for years, and and I was just saying to you earlier, you and I had actually never got a chance to even meet. So this is a pleasure, and it's an honor to have you on the program today.
Well, thank you very much. I've certainly visited a lot of your videos on YouTube in the past, and very informative.
Stan, we're going to get right to it here. People have been, for at least the last 3 to 4 years, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of concern, and this really seemed to heat up with President Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un of North Korea of the potential of an EMP attack over top one of our cities. Can you help us understand, first of all, what is an EMP attack and what is its possibilities if one exploded, let's say, over Kansas City or somewhere?
Okay, well, if your cameraman can link into slide 2 on your show images page, and click into that map, we'll look at Kansas City and the damage that can occur around that from an EMP strike. Now, an EMP can be man-made as like a nuclear detonation that makes an EMP strike. It can also, and that's a broad area thing, like a million square mile type effect from one bomb, or it can be a very concentrated effect from like a missile. That is a guided missile that comes in ground like a Tomahawk missile, and it can release a burst of very intense microwave at a building and fry all the electronics in that building.
We're looking at your map right now. It's targeting Kansas City, and it looks like there's rings, and I guess that might be levels of damage.
Yes. The line of sight damage from the EMP. Now, this one shows a nuclear EMP detonated 200 to 300 miles above the surface of the Earth. Now, from this kind of a thing, normally you're not going to have a lot of nuclear, damage as far as the fireball stuff down at ground level. But this is mainly meant to disable electronics, totally fry them all across the United States and part of Mexico and Canada, as you can see by the rings. Now, an EMP, let's get back to what it is. There are two sources of man-made and then solar. The solar EMP comes when you have a large coronal mass ejection and electromagnetic wave that is shot at the Earth from the surface of the sun. Now, in 2018, we certainly had one, a near miss as well. If it had hit us straight on, it might have created one of these nuclear EMPs, electromagnetic pulse. These pulses from the sun are longer, measured in minutes and hours sometimes, the duration of them. And they're not as dangerous to the electronics in your home as they are to the power grid. These long wave things can generate very high voltages along the power grid and start fires across everywhere there's a pole transformer. It'll short out and short to ground and create fire. Now, we know this from the Carrington event in the late 1800s.
So these are solar flares.
Yeah, just solar flare.
Yeah.
But a big one aimed right at us.
Okay, so they could actually, they have the power, if we was to go back to that Carrington event back in the 1800s, it could act, and thank God, in those days, all we had, I think, was a telegraph. If that same event happened today, Stan, what would be the effect on our current power grid and all these cell phone towers and satellites? I mean, what would happen?
Well, it would disrupt communications. It would disrupt satellite communications, particularly the side of the planet that's facing the event when it hits, depending on how long the duration of the storm is. It will cause fires all along the power grid and back down into the homes where the stuff connects to your power box going into your house, out in the yard. The nuclear pulse from a nuclear bomb happens so quickly. It's different than a solar EMP, and there are three levels of damage from an EMP. There's E1, E2, E3, and they occur. E1 is a very short duration pulse that fries electronics, and that's usually only found in the man-made devices. That occurs in about 5 nanoseconds or so. That's a lot, to take in. That's a lot of zeros, but it's a very quick pulse.
Right.
So in that period of time, it generates a wave, electromagnetic wave. It goes out across the United States in this case, onto the power grid, onto all the lines, electricity in your house. Everything gets bathed in these electromagnetic waves and the high voltage rises on the power grid from that blast. Now, as I say, it takes time for the level 2 E-pulse and the level 3 E-pulse to get, which can last for minutes or hours. The good thing is, if you survive, if your equipment survives the first EMP from a nuclear EMP, it so ionizes the whole atmosphere, that first one, that no matter if they have 2 or 3 others in the next few minutes or hours, it won't add any more damage to your stuff because you're shielded by the ionized atmosphere. But it's in that first one that you've got to be protected. If you don't know when that's coming, then you've got to have protection in place before that. The grid is just almost impossible to completely protect. It's privately owned power companies that have the grid, and they didn't want government interference in their grid and making changes to the grid for the mitigation of the high voltage pulse that comes in. So you can just pretty well assume at this point in time, for a number of reasons, that we're not going to be able to preserve the power grid when North Korea, Russia, China, somebody explodes one of these EMP nukes over the top of the United States. So you've got to look out for yourself. People that have solar panels for running their house or diesel generators, gas generators, or wind systems, all these systems are producing electricity and have circuitry in them. If they get damaged by the pulse, you won't have backup power, no matter what you do, unless there's a way to shield that equipment and its electronics from such an EMP pulse.
So Stan, there's people, because I know people who, a lot of folks have backup generators in case of the power grid going down. They assume they're going to then turn on their generator. They've got diesel stored or what have you, and they can function. But you're saying, that's great, you got a backup generator, but guess what? If it's an EMP attack that fries all of your appliances, your furnace, everything you have, it's not going to matter if you got a backup generator because nothing's going to work.
That's right. That's right. It's one of the things that kind of got swept under the carpet when people started looking at backup power, because we didn't think about, in general at that time, that, an EMP pulse might knock out the grid. Oh, by the way, that'll knock us out too. Now that we understand that, and there's so much mainstream coverage of it, as you can see on the show images page there, former presidential candidate and Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, gave a real stern warning. You can see that, you can link to that article and read it later. But it is now a clear and present danger, and it's up to us, because the government doesn't have the resources or the money to outfit every house in the United States with some kind of a shield device to shunt that high voltage away from their house. So my partner Tim Carty and I have developed this EMP shield device. It's only about like that big, 3 by 6 inches, whatever, can fit inside your power or your fuse box, or your circuit breaker box in your house. We devised this thing to detect this voltage rise from an EMP pulse in 0.5 trillionth of a second. Now that's faster than the pulse occurs.
Wow! I mean, that's faster than like That's like the twinkling of an eye almost. I mean, Stan, that's as fast as, the Lord returning. So you might be able to detect it. Maybe, Stan, you'll be able to one to detect it and say, here he is. I think there's even a scripture that says, as lightning goes from the east to the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. So maybe Stan's going to know when the rapture is, or Stan's going to know when the second coming is, because he's going to have the device. But okay, now wait a minute. You're saying this device, it's about 3 by 5. It will detect an EMP's coming, but does it protect from an EMP?
Yeah. What it does is in that short space of time, it sees a rise of voltage in your power box at your house or on your backup generators or whatever. It sees the voltage start to rise, and that quickly it says, oh, this is not normal. It's rising over the safe voltage for the house. I'm going to take all that voltage and shove it down into the copper ground rod here attached to the house or to the auxiliary power. And what happens is that high voltage then can't build up on the lines inside your house. It just shorted right straight to ground. We have a couple of wires that go into your power box and fit over at least a 20-amp breaker, which will carry that kind of current, because we're talking huge amounts of current in a fraction of a second. So we need to just get it out of the box and down into that ground rod, which is what our device does.
So, yeah, that's quite amazing. So it's able to capture the power of an EMP pulse, and it just immediately then shoots it down into the ground, into where it's grounded, protecting all of the appliances, the microwave, the refrigerator, everything in your house. And even if let's say you lived in the city of Kansas City, or let's say you lived in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, or something, and the whole city fried everything, you would still have appliances that would work. Now the grid would be down, but at least you have appliances that work, and that could be very, very vital for you, especially then if you do have a backup system, generator, right?
However, let me add this to this. It's going to protect all the devices in your home that are plugged into a power point. If you have something that's small and not plugged in and don't use it very often, we still suggest you buy one of these things you can get on Amazon, a little EMP Shield bag. It's a metal bag, a mylar bag, and put those kind of things in there, like small telephones or cell phones, things like that, or small computers. Because if they're not plugged in, not being used, then they're not being hooked up to our protection.
Right.
Okay, and as far as people that don't have backup power, why would they want one of these? Well, you want to save the stuff in the event that power is restored by the military or by your local power supply company if they have auxiliary generators themselves. And in the meantime, you can also use working things like radios and fridges, microwaves, if they work, but they just don't have power. You can use those as bargaining tools to go and, say, trade it to somebody that has one of these backup power systems for something else, food, gasoline, or whatever. But it's a barterable item if you got a working whatever.
So that's pretty amazing. So in other words, any appliance, let's say if God forbid we have to deal with this, but the reality is this is a real possible threat. I mean, when Newt Gingrich says this is the greatest threat to the United States right now is an EMP attack, because we have no ability. I mean, if it's a nuclear missile headed in our direction, we have hopefully a good enough military system to shoot things down, but we're not really I mean, an EMP, if I'm wrong, tell me, Stan, they shoot these missiles way up into space almost and then drop them. And it would be very difficult to deal with it if it's, this could actually, we're vulnerable. So you're saying that, every appliance that you own that was protected could give you some bartering power for food, diesel fuel, anything maybe, if we were in such a crisis.
Well, you want to reconstruct America after something like this happens, because they say that 9 out of 10 people, 90% of Americans, will be dead within a few weeks after this because of the panic, because of gangs and looting, a shortage of food, and, of course, no power and no water. So 10% of America will be what's surviving and around. So it's going to be very important to rebuild from centers of people who have auxiliary power and equipment that works. There will probably be maybe 10 or 11 spots in the United States that will be able to rebuild. I'm sure in Utah there'll be some from the Mormon Church who are prepared. And, they've even got some of their emergency cities located over on the western slopes here in Colorado. But there are other places like that spread across the United States that people have already started setting up. And your devices would be useful there.
So, we know that Russia has to have this same capability or technology, certainly Russia, China, and there's been great concern to potentially Kim Jong-un at North Korea. And we're going into this negotiations. I know that Kim Jong-un has met with China, took the secret train to China. Now they're going to meet with South Korea and apparently President Donald Trump. I know we're talking about lay down his nuclear weapons, lay down, denuclearize. Do you think that also that would include the EMP threat?
From him, yes. But from China and Russia, the threat is still present. I look at this North Korean thing as a red herring, as a diversion to take U.S. forces over into that area, naval and air forces over into that area, pulling them away from the Middle East. Because I think the real action is going to be over in Syria and in Israel, with the Arab nations eventually attacking Israel. Now, we know that Russia, for sure, doesn't want the United States to be able to support Israel and back her up should an attack start, with Turkey and Russia lining up to do it, or with the Saudis and their alliance of Arab nations coming in. And I think that's a very clear and present danger there as well. So, okay, however the North Korean talks go, I'm not so concerned that they will be the ones to launch the EMP, but more in the Middle East. And hopefully there'll be a peace treaty that will work for a while to give people more time to get ready, but we may be surprised. I know a number of prophets, Christian prophets, have said that Russia and China are going to be the main invaders and to the United States, and that America will burn. One of the things that would make America burn like Babylon in 1 hour would be an EMP pulse that causes all of the power grid transformers out there on the poles and everything to short out the ground and start fires. The whole country would catch fire, out there, around the power lines, which would then spread. So,
you mentioned different Christian prophets, and immediately, and I know I've heard of different ones. Immediately, one that comes to my mind is a guy you wouldn't expect, and that's A.A. Allen. And are you familiar with his prophecy that he left about the whole fires across from sea to sea?
Yes. We had that here. Holly told me about that today. I couldn't find the link to his site or to that prophecy, but yes, we are familiar with that.
Yeah, I actually have that prophecy in a book I wrote called "The Reflections on the Land of the Prophets," and I listed it, and you can read the whole thing in there, folks. But Stan, to your point. You had that David Wilkerson saw a fire in the sky. And in 1973, he had a prophecy of 41 things that were going to happen. 40 of them have already come to pass. Only one hasn't. He saw a fire in the sky or in the cosmos. Could he have been seeing, Stan, an EMP attack?
He could have been. He could have been seeing a solar EMP. But either way, it could have been an EMP.
Okay, back to that. We're to solar minimum right now, so that's probably a good thing. We have a lot less solar flares than we were having, but that won't last long, will it? And the sun seems to be, we had 2 huge solar flares during just right after that total solar eclipse back in August. There was, a few days later, there was these 2 huge X-class X flares. One was an X9 or something, and one was the 14th largest solar flare in history during a solar minimum. So we're not really guaranteed anything, are we?
No. In fact, if you talk to the solar physicists, they'll tell you at the moment they are confused about the nuclear equations or the nuclear reactions that occur in our sun. We could possibly be looking at the beginning of a dust cloud being emitted from the surface of the sun, like happened in Monoceros a few years back, Monoceros cluster out there in space. We've seen the behavior of that star out there blow off this shell of dust, in essence, right through its solar system, we're looking at possibility of this happening here, blowing right through our solar system. And as it passes through, it'll be a very dense cloud of material coming off the sun, which would cause the light of the sun to diminish greatly, and it would also thus make the moon's reflected light look kind of orangey red or blood red.
Wow!
To see these things happening right now, in a minimum, as you just said, is quite disturbing, because it is indicating increased solar activity in these large areas of the surface that are opening up, which it shouldn't. These are like super sunspots. In essence, they're just holes in the upper atmospheres of the sun, allowing gamma radiation, all kinds of stuff to come out. And we're seeing increased gamma coming from the sun too. Our magnetic field on Earth is weakening. It's part of the shield that keeps the gamma and cosmic radiation from deep space from killing us. It keeps the UV filtered out. But when this weakens, as it is now, and the sun's magnetic field starts to just dive into ours, it's opening up periodic channels right to Earth from the sun directly. So the sun is going to be, I think, God's main mechanism for judging the Earth shortly.
Well, it sounds like right out of the pages of the Bible in the book of Joel, when it says the sun shall be darkened and the moon shall turn to blood, that could be from this explosion of dust, you call it. And I am not familiar with this star doing this somewhere else, so that was new information for me. I wasn't aware of that. So this would be devastating, Stan, to the planet of Earth.
Yes. I just if you tell your technician to go back to that Show Images page, the main page where we selected on your image to get to our page, and have him go over to the Hagman page and look at image 41, and you'll see a picture of that star explosion I was telling you about.
Okay.
Image 41 under the Hagman Show Images page. So have him look at that when he gets a chance.
Okay. He'll try to pull that together. Stan,
all right.
Stan, as he's looking for that and what have you. Folks, again, this is Stan Deyo. Many of you already know who he is. He needs no introduction. But at the same time, you need to check out his website at www.standeyo.com. That's www.standeyo.com. He's got some great informative articles, very relevant to the time we're living in. And he studies, of course, biblical prophecy. So he understands that the events that we're discussing here are very real. Matter of fact, as I just told you, I can think of scriptures that immediately start popping in my head that are prophesied to happen in these last days. And so, Stan, I guess the next question is, what do people do? You talked about your little box. How do people find this? How do they get their hands on one of these little units if they would like to purchase one from you to get it on their electrical box and protect their appliances?
You can go to our website, which is myempshield.com. You can link to it off of slide 3 off of your Show Images page I set up for you today. myempshield.com. Now, we can only do make about 1,000 of these a week, because we're not like, General Electric or somebody like that. So get it while you can, and I hope we can get it to you in time. That's all.
So do people just need one per home or one per unit? Let's say they have a house, or they're living in an apartment, or they have a mobile home. And what do they need?
Well, if they're in an apartment, one will do. If they're in a home and don't have backup power attached somewhere or going to be attached, then one will do for them. If you have backup power systems, probably about 95% of the time, you will have to have 2 of these units. One for the direct current supplies outside your house, from your auxiliary power, and the other for your home power panel, because your auxiliary power is not usually connected into the box until it detects that the power is off on the mains. So you have to have another ground rod stuck in the ground out next to wherever your converter is for the energy coming in. And so at most 2.
And do you recommend, do they need an electrician to install this for them? Or?
You do. We say that, for insurance purposes and safety purposes. Basically, it's going to be 3 wires, maybe 4 in some cases, that go inside your circuit breaker box behind the panel, and so that's dangerous for the average person to do. So we do suggest strongly that you get the local electrician or someone who is savvy with the electrical field to install it for you. It's not a great job. It's just screwing in 4 wires, putting the screws back on the plate, and that's it. It can be done in 10 minutes or less.
And you've had this. This is an invention that you developed here, and you've had this tested and approved, and so I mean that's why I'm saying you feel really good about the fact that this is a way to protect people's appliances. I mean, right now we're all out here just twisting in the wind. Okay, we're at the mercy of the system. We're if Russia. You brought the point up about divide and conquer, basically. You're saying that Kim Jong-un could be a diversion tactic to draw the United States military toward the South Asia, while at the same time Russia or others, Iran, Turkey, I mean, they were meeting yesterday. They're still meeting today. You got Erdogan of Turkey. You've got Putin of Russia. You've got Hassan Rouhani of Iran. They're all sitting around right now saying they're trying to figure out ways to have peace in Syria. I don't see that. I think they're talking about a lot of things, including the vulnerability of maybe Israel. So, I mean, we're not protected, are we?
No, it's getting back to the point where we really have to be taking care of ourselves at a household level. It's like the old days, when the pioneers had to take care of themselves, grow their crops, get their water, do everything else. You've got to do that, and we do strongly suggest that you prepare with water and food and emergency supplies. That's why Holly wrote the book, Dare to Prepare, to do like our grandparents did, and our parents in some cases, to prepare for catastrophes. In this case, these are really clear and present dangers. They're not maybes. They're just kind of waiting for when. We're going to get it. And so you need to prepare. I mean, we've had our device tested over at the government testing labs. Keystone Compliance over in Pennsylvania. They're the ones that test a lot of the stuff for the government, for the EMP. They've tested our device, couldn't get it to fail. And Monday, my partner Tim and I are going to be talking with government officials on that at a much higher level about using this thing to help other folks. So, it's trustworthy. We actually devised this because I said to Tim, look, we've got an auxiliary power thing we're developing here with an antenna that will draw energy out of the atmosphere to give us power in our home. But if we get a lightning strike or whatever on our pole, I don't want it to fry our electronics out there on the pole. Throw together this thing for us from some, tubes and stuff you got there, and let's see if we can make it. So he went away, scratched his head, came back with a whole new circuit design and said, look, here's some new components that we can put on it, and we can protect against EMP as well as lightning strike and whatever else. So that's what started it. And then when we started telling our friends about it, they said, oh, we want one of those. So suddenly we had 1,000 people, I'm not kidding you, emailing saying, we want one of those. Right. So we had to figure out a way to make them. And, so we've done that now, got a factory set up. But, yeah, it's kind of one of those things that has a life of its own.
I love the story because that's the way these witty inventions, the Bible says it's in the Lord's power to give you witty inventions that you may prosper, and I mean, here you are, you get this, it's they always say that necessity is the mother of all inventions. Okay, I've heard that all my life for entrepreneurs. Yep. But for God to give you an ideal that is also tied to the realization of the events coming in the last days. God certainly wants America protected. We're a nation founded on the Word of God. And I think it's amazing. And the fact that you have a factory now, you're putting people to work, that's a great, great thing here in America. We love it, Stan. Again, folks, go to his website, www.standeyo.com. That's www.standeyo.com. A lot of times you guys see him. He's on the Hagmans a lot. And doing a great job with this product, Stan. Once again, tell them how they can get it, the easy way to get to it.
Easy way to get to it and to read all about the EMP stuff that I've been talking about is to go to myempshield.com, myempshield.com. If you have trouble finding it, you can go onto our website, standeyo.com, and there's a picture of an EMP shield just in the first page and a half or so at the top of it. Click on that, and that'll take you to our website. That's probably the quickest way. Standeyo.com. Click on EMP Shield when you see it. And we'll help you. We've had to make some special kinds of things for ham radio operators to protect their antennas like ours. Each case is kind of different there, but we have staff, at the factory that can help people to design what they need for their systems if they're different than normal.
So there you have it, folks. I mean, you're thinking all the way. StanDeyo.com. That's www.standeyo.com. Check out his website. He's got some great information, certainly. And Stan, it's been a pleasure, really, really an honor and a pleasure to have you on the broadcast today. And this is very informative information that I think a lot of folks are not aware of. And so I want to thank you for coming on, being with us.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Lord bless you now.
All right. God bless you. All right, folks. That's Stan Deyo. And I'll be back with you later next time right here on The Coming Apocalypse.